Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Independent Podcast. I'm your host, Fernando Garcia, and I am here with Dr. Nancy D. Young, who is running for Governor of California. Nancy, thank you for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, Nancy, I always start off by asking candidates, what prompted you to, put your name in the hat and run for governor and decided to pick this life? So many people talk about politics, but very few people actually take the steps, have the courage to put their name on a ballot. And it takes a very special person to do that. So where does that come from? How did you get to this point in your life?
For me, it's always been being a part of the solution. Many people can complain about the problems and all the things that we have going on, but how do we come to solutions, and who's going to raise their hand and say, I'll do it. I will, offer my assistance with being part of the solution. So this is not my first time throwing in my hat to run. Now, I've been elected in previous offices, but this is my first time ever running for governor, true. So this, I feel, is a call, a calling that I feel that God has led me to in my travels and all the things that I've done, in my experience in the past. I've worked really well in coming to solutions as team efforts. And there's many things that I've led, but to be able to inspire others to join in, I feel that this is a time that we need to look for ways to bring unity to our state. Our government across the country it's explosive right now. We have a lot of polarization, and many people are frustrated. Many people are frustrated trying to swing the other. And I am here really to throw my hat in, to be that bridge, that unifier, to bring different people to the table, to come to some real conclusions and some real answers for our people, for the people of California. And so it's the boldness and the audacity that I've been endowed with from my creator that has me in this place at this time. It wasn't an easy decision, believe me, because I don't need my name just out there. It's a decision, though, to be able to work and to get the work done.
That's awesome. And was there something maybe that took place in your childhood or way that you were raised that really kind of also brought you to this place that made you think maybe from a young age that this might be something you wanted to be a part of? As
a little girl, I was always that one in class that people would complain about what wasn't happening right or what the teacher said or didn't say. And I would be the one to raise my hand and say, Miss So-and-so, that's not exactly what you said, but this is what you said. But with the respect that I was able to give, I always found that the teachers were responsive and were like, you know what, I could realize that. Okay, Nancy, we'll go ahead and we'll do that. And I learned as a little girl that the worst my mom could ever do if I asked her for something or my dad would say no. I wasn't going to get a whooping. I wasn't going to be on punishment because I asked for something. And so that made me bold enough to ask for the big things and to be able to advocate for other people when I saw things going wrong. And so it really did start from when I was probably in the second grade and seeing injustices around me, even in elementary school when I was a little bit older. And I lived in Compton, California, and there was gang members around, but gang members would come to me and ask me for prayer. They would talk to me about real issues that they were dealing with in their families. And it made me truly appreciate my family, that I had curfews and that I had people that cared about me and looked out after me. And so that's where the seed of it was planted as a little girl.
Wow. And running for, like you said, you had ran previously and held other elected positions. What are some of those positions that you've held before?
So for 12 years, I was elected to the Tracy City Council. I was elected as council member, and then I was appointed in my last 8 years as a council member for Mayor Pro Tem. And then I ran for mayor, and I was elected the first female mayor, the first person of color to serve in that position. And I served 2 terms, which is the maximum. I served a total of 12 years, the maximum you can serve in our city.
Oh, wow. And tell me a little bit about, what did that teach you about, being in government? What did you take away from that experience?
I took away one of my mantras that I've always had, is that your voice does matter. And it won't matter if you're quiet and you don't say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. And when you have authority, to be able to be bold enough to utilize that authority for good. It's not about, look at me, call my name, bring me to the front row, but what can I do when I'm in those positions? And so I try to make the most of every opportunity that I had to be a positive influence. And I know there has been many returns on that, even just for other little girls or women or people of color, period, taking the stand to say, I can do this too. I can run for things, or I can apply for that top job, or I can be anything that I want to be because I tried it. And so there's so many lessons that I've taken away. But the one thing I have that I feel is kind of like Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. And it really does. And so I've tried to use that wisely.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's you never know who you're inspiring. What little kid or little girl's walking around seeing you and going, "Wow, I could be that." And maybe when we were growing up, there wasn't so much of that, but the fact that you're part of that is pretty amazing to me. And now, with the state as big as California and an economy as big as California, what are your top priorities? Is there something that really sticks out to you where you feel like, hey, we can tackle this, and this is one of my main issues that I really want to tackle?
Okay, so there are many, many issues that are in each city and each region, and definitely in our state. It's huge, and you can't do everything at once, but you can focus on some things that will make a difference immediately. And so you have to listen. You have to listen to what's happening within our communities, what's in California, what's important. And I keep hearing over and over, and I recognize this, even the 12 years I was on the council, that affordability, housing, whether it's rental or whether it's purchasing, to have that stability is super critical. So affordability, cost of living is definitely at the top of the list. And then also when it comes to safety, people have to feel secure in their own skin, in their own neighborhoods. And we have to look at that not only from accountability, which is crucial, but also from preventative. And so one of the things that I focus on is mentorship and help. And that's prevention, helping make sure that we have really good, productive citizens within our communities, and also looking at preventative measures when it comes to mental and behavioral health. So there's a lot of things that goes on with that. But I'm also looking at really investing into our small businesses, because they're really the cornerstone for our communities. And so you have to put your money where your mouth is. And so when we look at that, we have to do things, whether it's through regulations and different things, to encourage our businesses to stay, because we have an exodus, not only of families, people, individuals, but we have an exodus from California of our businesses. And we need to make sure that we're creating the right environment to keep them here and to inspire others to come back. So those are three of the top, but there are plenty more to focus on once I'm there.
Yep. Now, affordability is, a huge topic on people's minds right now. Housing's a big thing, whether it's to kind of curb the increase in pricing in housing and make things more affordable. Are there ideas that you have that you feel can help with that, either bring the cost of housing down or to at least maintain it to where doesn't get out of control?
Well, out of control is very subjective, because it started coming down probably around 2011, 2012, and then 2018 it was still teetering, but then 2020 things just went crazy. And California, once again, I was talking to a young lady just yesterday who echoed and amplified the voices I've been hearing a lot from Gen Zs, you millennials, who feel like they can't be able to buy a home and be able to have stability here. And I was sharing with her, people, Gen Zs, Gen X myself. A lot of people my age, if you stepped out at all of home ownership, it's very, very hard to re-enter the game of even being able to have home ownership. And understand, everyone does not have a desire to own a home. Many people do, but some people don't. But you have to have affordability across, whether it's rental or whether it's home ownership. And the reality of it is, it's underneath. It's an underneath current, and it's a over top current. What I mean by that, underneath, is dealing with the cost to build. And so this I saw firsthand in my city, and I've talked to many developers. If it costs so much when it comes to permitting and to regulations and to delays into building products and having lack of competition to be able to get reasonable prices for these items, then the starting point for the consumer is so much higher. So we have to work at both levels underneath to help the builders so that the buildings are not expensive when you come to that point to need to move in or to purchase. But on the other side of that, the top side of it is having subsidies and things that help the consumer to reach those higher levels in California. I am a witness to where my daughter lived in Virginia. They actually had funding that not only looked at low income, but looked at working class income. That's one thing we do not have in the state of California. So when she made a good salary after graduating from Howard University, she was able to get workforce housing costs that was literally half of the cost that she paid for the really nice apartment that she lived in Virginia. And so that's one of the things that we can do. Look at resources that's going to bridge that gap between what people can pay and what the real cost is out there until we're able to get some costs down. That's how you get people off the streets and able to have security in their own homes and affordability, at least at that level with homes.
Yeah, that's, a lot of people, I'm glad you brought up workforce housing, because that's not something that a lot of candidates are actually even talking about, to be honest with you, that I've heard. But other states have done it. Other countries have kind of focused a little bit on workforce housing. I think Singapore has done a great job of doing that. And the standard of living is pretty high in those areas. So, I think that's a great idea. None that I hear other candidates really talking about. So,
because what I noticed with the workforce housing, it wasn't just for rental. It was for home ownership as well. They had a whole buying program that was for a workforce, and she made a good salary. She made a good salary that still fell within that range. Yeah.
And, one of the things too is there's a lot of talk of, especially with county, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of state pension money, whether it's with STRS or CalPERS, where there have been people who brought up the idea of allowing those workers to utilize some of that pension money to build and create that workforce housing for themselves. And obviously workforce housing isn't free. People still pay for it. And it's a way of retaining workers as well. I don't know if it is something that you've ever thought about or would be open to at least the discussion of that, but it kind of allows public employees to, at the very least, gain a little bit control of their assets, their pension plan, and potentially provide housing for themselves and a little bit of a return on those investments that they're putting into those pensions. So I don't know if that would be something that you'd be open to.
So my thought on that is that I had not thought about that. And this is the first time that I've actually heard about that. But there are all kind of great ideas. And that's the whole point in being independent. That I'm not leaning to what one group thinks or another group thinks, because you have to be creative. Years ago, I went to a 3P, a private public partnership conference in Dallas, Texas. And when I was there, I found out all kind of great ideas that different individuals have, that different states have implemented, that different countries have implemented. And you have to be open to that. The one thing that they said, the downfall of many cities, is that they're not open to giving up any of that authority. They want to be in control of everything. But we can't be in control of everything if we want things to really work, because I don't know it all. Nobody knows it all. And we have to be open. And I'm absolutely open to looking at ideas such as that.
Yeah. And you brought up a point that you're running as an independent. Tell me why you've chose to run as an independent and what that means to you running as an independent.
Okay, now I have to preface that when I was 17 years old, I was excited to be able to vote in my first election. And so I grew up just 20 years graduating high school, about 20 years after the big height of the civil rights movement. And so being president of the Black Student Union, we did a big play production of Then and Now. and understanding the sacrifices that people made, the lives that were sacrificed so that we could have a right to sit wherever we want on the bus, so that I or anyone else can have the right to vote and not have to go through all of these challenges that people were sent through back in the day to not be able to vote, actually. And so I signed up to vote. As soon as I got to college, I was 17. And so as soon as I turned 18, I remember voting at my first election. I was thrilled. And so when I signed up, I was like, okay, what party am I? Not really realizing what my family was, because they never really promoted they talked a lot of social issues. And of course, I agree with a lot of that. Because that's the advocate in me, to fight for other people and, and their rights and things that are just right, and fight against things that are wrong. And so I was at UC Berkeley, and I was like, well, this right here is special. And if this is one thing, I must be something else. So that's what I chose at the time. But I realized that over time, I was truly independent person. I've always had both Republican and Democratic people signs in my yard. It was really the person and their issue, and whether I can trust their integrity and their work ethic to actually get things done. And I've been in meetings where there were great ideas and solutions brought up for certain issues, but people would actually say, but do you know who actually brought that up? And I'm like, well, does it matter? Right. It does matter. It matters who brings it up. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Right. So I was literally independent even when I was in another party. And so in 2018, I said, you know what, this has got to stop. I stepped out into a non-party, actually it was just called decline to state at that time. And that independent role where I could really, truly just be free in other people's minds. I was already free in my mind, but to be free in other people's minds overall, that I can choose the best, and I can bring different people to the table. And I have over the years. I've brought Dems into Republican rooms that they could never have stepped in. And I brought Republicans into Democratic rooms that they could never either. But we've sat at tables and we have come to solutions and worked out many different problems just because we saw each other as people. And for me, ministry is that equalizer. It makes everybody equal. And so we all need God. We all need something more than ourselves. At some point, all of us have needed mercy. And we need grace. And so for me, is what independence is about. So that's why I chose Vote Purple. I mentioned briefly earlier about growing up in Compton. And because I lived in a Crip neighborhood, we could not have red. It was just, you could not do it. And so when I came to college, then you have to choose red or blue parties. Why do we do red or blue? So purple, I chose purple for royalty, first of all, but then also because it's a perfect blend of red and blue. And so this is what I mean by independence. This is what I mean by voting purple. This is what I mean by being that bridge to bridge the gaps and the people together so that we can come unified on the things that matter, because people don't see colors when it comes to homelessness or when it comes to affordability. I don't care who fixes the problem, just fix it.
Right. Absolutely. And, I'm a big, I myself am independent. And to me, it shows a level of leadership when you decide to make that choice to run as an independent, because, in my opinion, we have so many politicians out there who they read the room, they pick a party based upon where their precinct or their district is, and they kind of go that route, where somebody who has the courage and the foresight to say, hey, I'm an independent, I believe in this country, I want people to come together, is leadership. I commend you for that, because we more than ever need leaders in this country, not politicians. And so
that's true.
Yeah. And thank you for doing that. So one of the other big issues that people talk about is energy in the state of California. Any thoughts about how to either make energy more affordable, how to make it more abundant, different, types of energy, whether it's nuclear, solar, wind? What are your thoughts on energy?
I think a lot of those things are like time dated when you talk about wind. And I think about all the windmills when I came up to Berkeley 39 years ago, and my mom was driving my car, and I woke up and I looked, and I was surrounded, I was literally in Tracy, and I
Yeah.
was surrounded by windmills. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. But, out different places throughout California, you have windmills. And so the wind technology, I think just things evolve. Things evolve over time. So
Mhm.
like when we had the railroad that established my city, that established many cities across this country, then it changed from coal to the change to steam. Our industry went down in Tracy because we refused to grow with what was happening with innovation at the
Mhm.
time. And so we found our fortunes in other areas, whether it was
Yeah.
tomato crops or sugar beets.
Right, right.
You got to do what you got to do. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
energy over time has been very popular in the last 10, 20 years when it comes to solar. So
Mhm.
solar energy is one of the things that has been promoted for a while. You got knocks on the door all the time. Do
Right,
you want to have solar? Do you want to have
right,
solar?
right.
And I remember our school district, they took advantage of some grant funding to be able to get some programs that they had to be able to solarize all of their schools and create actually these overhang coverings that's
Mhm.
more like parking lots
Yeah.
in their parking lots. And that's been
Mhm.
beneficial on several levels.
Yeah.
And so they've been able to utilize that solar, the energy that's been produced from it to help power their schools, as well as be able
Mhm.
to sell off the excess.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of good things that's going with that. I was approached about nuclear energy before because we
Mhm.
were close out by Lawrence Livermore Lab and all these other things, but a lot of those things are still a little leery. There's a
Mhm.
lot of speculation. So I've had different conversations. And so I'm sure that will be coming up more in the future. And so just how we power things, like whether it's even hydrogen, we in Tracy was going to have a hydrogen plant to house the hydrogen plant to be able to run a new train that was for commuters.
Okay.
And so looking at that type of energy, I've been to a lot of different meetings on that too, to look at the safety of it, the more efficient use of it. So there's a lot of different energy that we have that's available, whether it's battery operated too, whether it comes to cars, vehicles.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that we have a direct carbon capture
Yeah.
business in our city. And so the first in our country. And so I'm open to just innovation,
Mhm.
technology. There's a lot of real things happening. And so I had them to explain it to me at the lowest levels,
Yeah.
very simple because I love to be able to explain. So I need to be able to understand
Right.
clearly
Right.
what the things are. So I know that I know California itself is super regulated. I would say probably overly regulated,
Right.
and a lot of different areas that actually cause some of our costs to be higher than they need to be. But when it comes to innovation, part of that innovation should be cost reduction strategies
Mhm.
are built into those things. So everything has its place, and I know that we just need to be balanced to make
Yeah.
sure that we're moving forward righteously within our state. We don't need to carry the burdens of the whole world in
Right.
California.
Right. Right.
But so there's options.
Yeah.
There's options, and we should look at the options and weigh them out according to the benefit of each one of those.
Yeah. Now, growing up in Compton and then also, being mayor of Tracy, two very different areas. I mean, I grew up in LA myself. A lot of people, you grow up in Southern California, you really, or anywhere else in the country, you really don't realize how much of an agricultural powerhouse California is sometimes. When you grow up, for example, in LA, and you never realize majority of our state, you're driving up the five, you're driving up, you don't, there's just nothing but farmland. What do you feel are some of the issues facing the agricultural industry here in California? What are your advantages being a mayor of a town that produces agriculture? Is there anything we can do better in this state to help farmers in the state of California?
No, there are a lot of challenges that our farmers have, and I've driven that 5 stretch between Los Angeles and Northern California many more times than I can count, at least
Right.
at the bare minimum 1,000 times.
Well,
And
yeah.
so it's a lot of land that we have, and even in Tracy, we have a lot of almonds. We have different crops, but there's different crops up and down California. one of the challenges that we have though is water.
Mm.
And so I decided to take a class, to be part of the Delta Protection Leadership class a couple of years ago. And actually, I just went to a reunion last week for that, just to learn more about the Delta, the different water systems that we have. It's a real challenge that we have in California. And so it's not just, how to grow, but technology is changing. And the dynamics of what people utilize is different. When, for instance, when the sugar beets were in abundance, we had holly sugar in our city. But then when they started dying off, then we didn't have that anymore. And so when we had an abundance of tomatoes, we had Heinz in our city. So it's just really dependent on what's prosperous, what's working, and what can be done at the time. I've spoken to people recently in the recent last couple of years about the wine industry and how that's really changing. And so it's perception too. And I was talking to them, just my own personal ideas of, narratives. It's how the narrative is portrayed, whether it's for snooty people, as many people have come to think now of wine. And so I'm like, so I gave some ideas for how you could change that narrative to help build back up that industry, even though I utilize wine for communion at church. That's my personal thing.
Okay.
but there's different industries that have, have their different challenges. So, but many of them are dealing with water, water issues. And so I know there's a whole lot more. That's why it's important that we're taking time when we're coming to solutions and dealing with issues to talk with different ones about their industry. You don't have to know everything. I learned that as a little girl. You don't have to know everything there is to know, but you need to know resources, and you need to take time to invite the people to the table to listen to them, because many of them have ideas as well. Many of them want to be a part of the solution, even if they're just telling you what the problem is, but please go find a solution that's going to help make this happen for me.
Awesome. And, you had mentioned, safety and people feeling safe, and what are your ideas in regards to public safety and making sure we have a safe state? What are your feelings about what are we doing right, and what can we do better?
Okay, so safety is a big topic. I remember years ago people were like, are you going to say that safety's not? I'm like, really? Safety's not important? It absolutely is important where we live. I mean, from being a little girl, having people break in our house all the time, but usually they had a time, they had a code. They would break in your house while you were at school and at work. I remember one time somebody broke in our house in the middle of the night. I'm just like, what the world? We were holding our breath. We could move until we heard the door open. And then we heard the door open, and then we gave it some time, and then we all snuck out of our beds, because I was in part of junior high school, and my mom and dad came, we made sure everybody was fine. Then we went to peruse the house to find out what was stolen. And, and then we go from that. But we were just grateful to have our lives, to have our health, that none of us was hurt. But, in 1982, when they started doing drive-bys on my street, and they killed a young man across the street from me, just being in his yard Labor Day weekend and enjoying a barbecue. And he didn't live to see the next school year, which started the next day. Then we start looking at, well, where do we want to live? And so my dad moved us out of Compton. We moved to San Fernando. And I was very, very decisive and specific of where I wanted to raise my family. I had no idea that I would birth 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, which are all grown now, thank God, 25 and 33. I had no idea that I would have, these men and women in my family, but I knew that I was not going to raise them in a place where they had to fight for their life, for their education, for promotion, for too many fights to do in life. And so I'm like, I need to. So when one of my sons was like, but Mom, you were right. You're straight out of Compton. I'm like, you straight out of the suburbs, boy, because on purpose. So I moved to Tracy on purpose because the crime level was low. And I'm grateful for really good police captains, police chiefs, for our men and women in blue. They are so important to us. I mean, the fire have their own place. I have
Yeah.
family, friends that are fire, and I appreciate all that they do. To safety is surrounded about a lot of things, not just police. It is fire and all these things as well. But safety, it's important that where you live, that you can be comfortable, that you don't have to worry about somebody breaking in your home, that you can
Right.
have a business and don't have to worry about somebody broad daylight brazen come in and steal and rob. It's terrible. When I worked at McDonald's, they told us if anybody coming here to rob us, you just let them have everything in your drawer because
Right.
we can replace the money. We're insured, but we can't replace you.
Right.
And so we can't replace individuals in California. I've gone to too many funerals. I've seen and I've heard too much that are people not feeling safe, not just from gun violence, but okay, dare I say ICE. Different people
Mhm.
don't feel safe
Yep.
to even go out to community events because they don't know if they're going to be harassed, if they're going to be arrested, if they're going to be
Mhm.
deported without any process. So we need to feel safe all around. So there's a number of things that need to be done that for safety. It's not just one thing. There is accountability. Yes, there are laws on the books that is making it these criminals to be very calculating. They're very
Mhm.
smart to know, okay, I can't steal more than this. So let me
Right.
add it up. If I take this, this, and
Right.
this, it won't be a felony. Crazy.
Right.
And so,
Right.
but we've been talking about that for years. We've been talking for that at Cal City's level, at local levels, talking with the people in our malls and different ones that's closing down businesses because they've had too many hits that are
Yeah.
dangerous for them. And so we need to make sure that we have laws and enforcement in place that's going to deter this bad behavior. It's not okay. And at the same time, we need to be preventative. We need
Yeah.
to be preventative, as I mentioned briefly earlier about mentorship. I have been a mentor and run mentorships for more than 20, 30 years. It's important to me that I'm investing in our next generations. I used to want to be a police officer, like on 21
Right.
Jump Street. I used to watch Holly Robinson. At least that was
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
my person I can identify with. And I knew I would be that one that would
Mhm.
not arrest the bad guy, but that would work really hard to help change him so that
Right.
he
Right.
would be a good guy. And so that was always my heart to
Yeah.
work with you, to work with trouble kids. I would always say, give me the worst ones. You can
Yeah.
deal with the easier ones. Give me the bad ones because
Yeah.
I know that I can touch their heart if they just know that somebody cares. And so that's what I've invested my life into. And that is definitely part of the prevention that we need, but it should be mandatory, not just optional, as our city and many other cities do when they go out for calls. The police do when they go out for
Mhm.
calls and there's mental and behavioral health involved. They take out a special team with them because
Mhm.
they can help them and they can work in ways that don't escalate
Yeah.
unnecessarily. We have so much escalation unnecessarily because you don't know what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with somebody that's having a 150 episode and you can help de-escalate the situation without brutal force, then let's do that.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be handled in a lot of different ways, not just accountability top down, because police are there to help serve and protect.
Yeah.
And so, but we need to also really amplify our preventative measures. And I think
Yeah.
that's how we get more of a well-rounded California.
Yeah. Nice. Now, one of the things that's kind of also part of law enforcement or part of safety, I would say, is the homeless issue here in California. Down here in San Diego, for example, about 50% of all calls are related to somebody who's homeless, and so it takes away from we have a law where if you the first time it's a warning, the second time then they're issued a ticket, which obviously they don't pay, and then if they're able again, then they can issue an arrest. And so it really, what it does is it kind of takes law enforcement away from other things that could be happening, and the response times aren't as quickly as we would like them to be. What are some of your thoughts about how do we fix the homelessness issue, or how do we work on fixing it? What do you think you could bring to the table?
Now, homelessness is that, what was it called? Perplexing issues. When I first was elected in 2012, I was in an all-day seminar on perplexing issues, and the one I chose was homelessness. So this is 2012, trying to be preventative more so than what we're dealing with right now with homelessness. So as a little girl growing up in Compton, as I said, my church was in South Central LA, and my grandfather had a nursing home in Watts, where my mom grew up. And so I would volunteer there in the kitchen with my great grandmother. But with my church, the name of our church was called Worldwide Mission. And I had a female pastor, and she had a heart for missions for people. And so we would give out food to homeless. We would give out food to homes in the neighborhood around the church. We would go down to the mission, our choir would sing, and we would help serve. So I've seen it from different levels, but I also experienced homelessness when I first got married. When my husband, the place where he was living, he had already put a notice that we were getting a new home, but that home fell through. So I moved in. I'm all excited. The next month I go downstairs to the office and I hand them a check for the rent. They hand it right back to me. They said, we can't take this because your husband said that you're moving, and we already have people ready to move in that apartment unit. And they're threatening to sue us. So you can stay for 2 more weeks and then you have to go. And so 2 weeks, I still had a job to go to. I moved a distance away. So now I had an hour commute to my job. And so it came up 2 weeks later. I'm like, honey, did you find anything? No. So we packed up, put everything in storage, and then we slept in our cars from May to August. We had no place to live. So we stayed in Motel 6, which is super expensive, and eating is super expensive when you don't have your own stove. And so then a friend let us stay with them for a little while until we were able to find a place. So homelessness has its different faces. Now I wasn't under a tree. I wasn't out in the park. I wasn't on the curb, but different people start out different levels. I've met so many people who left. Maybe they went through a divorce and then they kept their car, but then they got behind on their tags. And then they're out one day, their car get towed. Now they don't have that covering. We have a lot of youth who are homeless, actually, that are sleeping on couches. I met a couple before. Their kids were actually living with the coaches that they played basketball for and that they ran track for, but the parents couldn't stay there. So they were out on the streets doing the best that they could. So talking to different individuals, you find out different reasons, and there's different solutions. The best thing for homelessness is prevention. If you can keep people in their homes, then it makes it so much easier for them, because it's so much harder to get back in because prices of things are just escalated and super high. But as far as the drain on resources, because the whole wraparound mental services, unless people are on their meds, then some don't even realize they really need mental or behavior help. But so it's a drain not only on our police services, but it's a drain on our hospitals. The hospitals the emergency rooms are being misused. And so it's hindering those who really need emergency help because of this. So in 2016, I was finally able to get this as a priority on our city council. In our city, I have to say, in our whole county, we're the first ones to have a city-owned homeless shelter, low barrier temporary housing, because we weren't able to really get the people off the street because of the laws that are in place. So that we couldn't do anything about them being in public right-of-ways unless we had a shelter for them to go to and a bed available. So strategically, we keep beds available so that you always have that offer. And so I talked to other people in other states and other cities, whether they turn on their sprinklers. They came up with all kinds of things to run people out of their parks. Our police, I have to say, are very community oriented. And so they were able to really convince and persuade, especially during 20 and 21, different individuals to really go to this one area, this one location, which now we're renovating and revising and revamping and really paying back the community for the inconvenience that they had for a while. But by it being contained in one main area for us, our police was able to go out and police, make sure things that were together. We had garbage pickup 3 days a week to make sure that the areas stayed clear of extra debris. And so there was a coordinated effort to be able to even get the resources to the different individuals that are unhoused. So there's a lot of different things that can be done. One of the things that I first did was really help this one organization. And I did this through raising funds through a couple of events to help them to be able to get the showers for the homeless, to be able to run the showers for the homeless. Now they have laundry services. But not just more than that, they were able to coordinate the efforts because many people have a heart for others and they want to help. But if it's not a coordinated effort, then you get a waste of resources. You have people taking pizza one night, and that same night somebody takes Chinese food, and another night somebody's coming over with handmade sandwiches, and it's wasted. And then the next day there's nothing. And so it's a bit about coordination and getting different individual groups, civic organizations, nonprofits, faith-based organizations together to really help that balance. In DC, one last thing, I was in DC for a convention, and I went to Starbucks, which was right next to the hotel where the convention was. And the Starbucks manager, she walked out with me, and she had hand warmers, and she had coffee, and she had hot chocolate for the homeless encampment across from her. They adopted their own little neighborhoods to make sure that they stay cleaned up and that the people had what they needed in those areas until they were able to get off of the street and into housing. Because some people, they do need a hand up, and some people, they don't. But can I say one more thing? Because I said that was one more thing.
Absolutely.
Because another group of people that I've met and I've talked to are veterans. And I'm sorry, but I truly feel that our veterans who have given some of them, their mental, their behavior, everything has been challenged from the things that they've had to see in combat. My father, my biological father, fought in World War II. My stepfather fought in Vietnam. And so I know they had their own challenges, the things that they came back to deal with. And so there are some that are on the street. They can't take clothes in places. They can't take loud noises. It's a lot of things that they have. So there are some things, veteran homes that are being developed, focused on those veterans. So I just want to just call attention that there's a lot of different things out there that causes homelessness. So it has to be a multi-pronged effort to make sure that we're taking care of that. So we don't have the wasted resources. I understand, as the question first began, with the resources of our police, because there's some great things that we want them to be able to do and not to have to babysit other areas. So
absolutely. Well, awesome, Nancy. I really appreciate you coming on the show and telling your story and talking about some of the issues that are important to you. If you can tell the audience, if somebody's interested in learning more about your campaign or even helping you or contributing to it, how would they go about doing that?
Well, we do have a website. It's called nancyyoungforgovernor.com. So just as simple as it sounds, NancyYoungFor governor.com. So that's the website that you can reach us. Our email address is there as well. Feel free to reach out. I actually see all the emails that come through as well myself, besides my team who's logged in. So I'm answering questions left and right. People want me to solve all their issues right now. I'm doing my best for the resources that I have and the connections that I have. I do answer because it's so important that people know that their voices do matter, even if I don't know the answers, but I can help kind of guide you in the direction to find those solutions.
Awesome. Once again, Nancy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I wish you the best of luck. For those of you out there, please go to her website. I'll put a description in the link, and let's make California a better place to live. So
yes,
thank you, Nancy. Have a great rest
of
your day.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.
You too.